Kevin, I'm your father.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Non-Tradicath, and I'm the non-traditional Catholic, maybe ex-Catholic. It kind of depends on how you define your terms. But this is Conversations with Catholics, episode 4. And today's episode is a special episode because I have my first repeat guest with me. Greg from Conversations with Catholics, episode 2, is back. In today's episode, we're going to touch on a little bit of what we talked about in episode 2. Revisit some stuff, hash it out, see if we can't get a little bit more clarity there. And we're just going to see where the conversation leads us. We're going to go for roughly an hour. Try to keep this one a little shorter than last time. And with that, Greg, thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me back. I can't believe it. You actually can stomach me returning.
Hey, that's why I made the channel, is to talk to guys like you. So I really appreciate you coming back.
Well, and I appreciate you too. Just to echo Kyle in some recent comments of his, I really appreciate your just easygoing, very fair-minded, amicable approach to things. It's so easy, as you're well aware, to get into contentious fights when it comes to the topic of politics or religion. And so to be able to have a discussion about one of those two topics in which both parties disagree but do so amicably is quite refreshing. So,
well, thank you for the kind words, Greg. I really appreciate it. And same to you. Religion is one of those things that people tend to care a lot about, so it's easy for religion to get contentious, but there's no reason it has to. And I think that you and I did a really good job last time, and I think we're going to do another really good job this time, because I think that me and you just kind of have personalities that mesh well. So I'm looking forward to this. So I'm going to go ahead and make you full screen. And so you can share your screen and pull up the clips from last time that you want to discuss.
okay.
And we can get right into it.
Okay. Well, those clips won't come right away. They'll be staggered.
Oh, sure. Okay.
The first thing I wanted to go back to or revisit was just a simple comment that you made about 40 minutes into the video. You said you're talking about quantum reality. And then you said the rest of the universe is deterministic, as far as I can tell. If the universe were not deterministic, how would it look different than it does now?
If the universe wasn't deterministic, I would expect the laws of physics to not work, like a lot of the times, like a really significant portion of times. Like if things weren't deterministic, then I would expect, gravity would not be 9.8 meters per second squared. It would be 9.8 meters per second squared right now, and then maybe 8 tomorrow, and maybe 7 in yesterday, and who knows. Nothing would work with any kind of science wouldn't work because nothing would be repeatable. You would go to repeat an experiment and get like totally different results, even though you did the same thing twice.
Okay.
Yeah, all of those things would be different in a non-deterministic universe for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I differentiate the human aspect of potential determinism from the rest of nature. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think I know, so don't let me put words in your mouth, but I think I know why you do that. And I imagine it's because you're a dualist, a mind-body dualist, right? So you probably think that the mental has just a different set of rules than the physical. So a lot of people who are dualists will think of something like free will as being a non-deterministic cause in the universe. Like, oh, hey, what caused Kevin to lift his arm up and then put his arm down? Oh, well, Kevin's free will determined that. And Kevin's free will is non-deterministic. So I think that a lot of Catholics want to argue that there is a difference between mental and then non-mental causation. And I think that most Catholics, I can't speak for everybody, of course, but I think that most Catholics are on board with a non-mental deterministic universe. Catholics don't think that gravity changes all the time. They think that gravity is deterministic. But I think most Catholics will argue that the mental is non-deterministic. And
yes.
So that I definitely, so I still disagree with, I don't make a distinction between the mental and the non-mental. But that's one way that I think Catholics, see the world, that I don't see it that way. But But so maybe I didn't answer. So maybe I was being cheeky with my response to you. I think that your response, I think that your question may have, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but I think that your question was, if we lived in a world where the mental was non-deterministic, but the non-mental world was deterministic, how would that look? And that's like a different question than what if the whole world was just non-deterministic? So I answered the question, what if everything was non-deterministic? And I think that you meant, no. Everything that's non-mental is still deterministic, but just the mental. Is that maybe what like what you were getting at?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't believe in a world that is like that has this mental and non-mental distinction. I think that everything that we call mental is really just different brain states. So your brain chemistry determines all the things that we call mental, right? So you might refer to something as so you might say, what caused Kevin to lift and then lower his arm? It was his mental free will. And I might say like, yeah, sure, it was my free will. But what I mean when I say free will is that I mean that like the brain chemistry, I willed. So I didn't cause the brain chemistry to happen, but the brain chemistry was me. Like that's what I refer to when I say will. Like I have a will and I willed to raise and then lower my arm, and my brain chemistry made that happen. Now my brain chemistry was also the reason why I willed it in the first place. But I think that even free will is compatibilistic. I don't accept libertarian free will, which I think is probably where a lot of Catholics lie, is like they believe in like libertarian free will. And I don't. I believe in compatibilistic free will. So that was a lot. Let me pause and see if I...
Sure. Yeah, no, you're definitely barking up the right tree with this. So I do want to ask that question. When it comes to like somebody raising their arm or moving their leg forward to say kick a soccer ball or something, what enables that? A tree obviously can't just reach its limbs out and just do this, just because. There's the only way a tree's going to be able to do that is if the wind is blowing, or if there's an animal standing on it, or if a person is pushing on it or something. So what is it that you think that's different about us? Why are we able to do this and do this when there's nothing, there's nothing moving my hand other than my choice to move it? How is that possible? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I don't think that this is really what you meant, but like the first place that my brain went was like, well, trees can't move that way in the same way that humans can't fly. Like it's just not something that like, trees don't have like, joints in their limbs the way that humans have joints in our limbs. So, we can do this, and because we've got elbows, and trees don't have elbows, so trees can't do that. But I don't think that's what you really meant. I think you meant like, it appears as if humans are able to will things into happening, and it appears that trees can't, right? That's kind of what you meant? Okay, yeah. So my response there is that trees do will things to happen, in a sense. Right? Like they have xylem and phloem that goes through the tree veins. I forget what you call those. And they, eat sunlight, right? And they poop carbon dioxide. Like they will things to happen. They grow acorns to reproduce. Trees definitely... tree biology is such that trees work towards a certain end, right? You could start to use teleological language to describe that. But humans, obviously, it's way more complex, right? Like humans have emotions. I don't think that trees have hold on. Trees might have basic emotions. Like trees can be distressed and stuff like that. Like they release a certain hormone or a certain pollen when they're stressed, and that actually warns other trees to do things. Trees can sense when storms are coming, and they will turn their leaves like upside down to prevent snow from building up on the trees and stuff like that. So trees probably experience like a super rudimentary form of emotion, but everything that humans experience is just way, way more complex than what a tree experiences, no doubt. But I don't think of that as like a separate and unique thing. I just think about it as like an iterative version of what a tree has. So in the same way that like a computer from the 1960s is Like modern computers are just iterative versions of the computers from 1960. In much the same way, I think that humans have the same biological stuff as all of the other animals. Trees are made out of cells and we're made out of cells. We breathe in one gas and we breathe out another gas, and so do trees. Now, we're really different than trees, but we're not that different from the other great apes. So,
But at the end of the day, though, I can appreciate the fact that the trees obviously don't have joints, but the branches can still move. So they might not be able to bend them. A tree can't obviously bend its elbow per se because it doesn't have an elbow, but the limb itself can move. It can go up and down, and does when there's strong wind or when somebody's pushing it or whatever. Why can't it just move? Because it wants to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they lack the muscles to do so, and the bones and the tendons and the ligaments. I know. I don't think that's the answer that you're looking for, but that's kind of the answer that I have. Like, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. Well, my thought is just that it seems like if you describe the human arm, say in a strictly naturalist way, then it's just a group of cells and bones and blood and that kind of thing. And so those things don't. Cells, maybe you could describe cells as moving, but you can't. But bones can't just move on their own. They have to be moved. You know what I'm saying? And so, but even cells, to get a group of cells to all move in the same direction, there's got to be some sort of something directing that. Other than unless if it's not a physical thing that's directing that, making it happen, then what's going on? Does that make sense?
I think I do understand the question, but I would just say it is a physical thing. It is a physical thing that's causing your limbs to move in the way that they are. So when you move your arm, so muscle, like if you just had a muscle like on a table, the muscle can't move. But if you zap it with electricity, the muscle will contract. That's exactly what your brain does. So when I move my finger, I've got little muscles in my finger, and my brain sends an electric signal to the muscle, and it zaps my muscle, and then my muscle contracts. And you can see it a little bit, but the other camera can see it better. So all that I'm doing right now when I'm moving my finger is my brain is shocking the muscle into contracting. Now, way oversimplification, but all of that obeys the laws of physics. I am not breaking the laws of physics when I move. And no human has ever broken a law of physics as far as we can tell. I recently lost 45 pounds, and this was like a big thing to me. Calories in, calories out. My body does not break the laws of thermodynamics. I just ate enough calories to be in a calorie deficit, and the weight came off at exactly the pace that it was supposed to. I ate in a 3,500 calorie deficit per week, and 1 pound of fat is exactly, it's 3,500 calories. So I lost exactly 1 pound per week for the past 45 weeks, and I've lost 45 pounds total by being exactly 3,500 calories in deficit every day. Because my body obeys the laws of physics. My body is not magic. I don't break the laws of physics. Neither my brain breaks the laws of physics, nor my muscles, nor anything like that.
Okay. So what do you think it is, or what is it that that is able to send that signal from your brain in the first place? Does that make sense?
So stimuli will cause the brain to send signals.
Okay.
Because think about it this way. Your brain is sending signals to your heart right now that you're not controlling. So how do those signals work?
So that would kind of be a different thing, though. Like, that's sort of your body functioning on its own. But if you wanted to just sort of, and that's kind of an essential thing. If you wanted to just arbitrarily put your hand up like this for no particular reason, what is it that's it seems to me that there's no stimuli that's being responded to other than one's own thoughts. one's own will, as it were. And so it's then that we come back to the question of what is the will then, you know what I'm saying?
So, there is stimuli though that's causing this to happen. So there's uncountable amounts of stimuli every moment is hitting your brain. So it's not just your ears that are hearing me. Like, I might tell you to raise your arm and then you might do it. And that's, in that case, your ears are picking up my voice and that's a stimuli. Seeing somebody do something might be a stimuli. Smelling a certain smell might be a stimuli that makes you react in a certain way.
Sure.
Your brain is just a stimulus receptor machine, and it reacts to the stimulus that it receives. There is never a situation in which your brain breaks the laws of physics. So, like, your brain is not capable of generating a signal that will move a muscle in your body without that energy coming from somewhere else, coming from some stimuli. There is no spontaneous generation of energy in your brain to send an electronic signal. That would break the laws of physics.
Okay. Well, I am nothing approaching a neurosurgeon, so
Oh, me neither, right? Like, I'm just, my degree is in chemical engineering, so I know about chemistry and I know about like physics, but I don't know about like surgery. So.
Yeah, well, surgery is. I'm not a brain scientist of any kind, and so I should probably let this one rest. But just after suggesting that, what from some of the things I have read about the science surrounding consciousness, is that a topic you've explored at all?
Yeah, a little bit. And I'll say that I don't understand it well, and I don't think that anyone understands it that well, to be honest. Like, even the people studying consciousness, I feel like consciousness is one of those fields where like we need a lot more people studying it for a lot longer time.
Okay.
But go, like, don't let that stop us from talking about it.
Yeah, well, it needs to, because that's as far as my knowledge base goes. It's just that I too have read on it, just in a sort of cursory fashion so far, and what I have read has been quite fascinating, and I will come back to it in a little bit, just briefly. But for now, I just wanted to wrap up that part of our discussion with just the thought of, if it's not something you've looked into yet, it might be a good idea to do so, because it's quite interesting.
Yeah, no.
Next topic, mereological nihilism. Let's revisit that for a minute.
Sure.
Mereological nihilism would say that things don't exist how would you articulate?
In a word, the only things with like brute existence are the simples, the mereological simples, and all composite items are nothing but combinations of the simples.
Okay. But there are composite items. Yeah.
There are combinations of mereological simples.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so with that, I have a hard time understanding. It seems like a distinction without a difference. But something tells me it's not. Something tells me there's a link here to Aristotle or to Plato or something, and then, but up front, to say that you, Kevin, are not really you, Kevin. You're just a collection of mereological simples that all come together to make Kevin, leaves us with Kevin still. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
I do, and so my gut reaction was to be like, yeah, man, it is a distinction without a difference. That's not quite right. There are small differences, and the small differences matter in like philosophical discussions like the one that we're having now, but they don't matter like 99% of the time. I don't, even though I'm a mereological nihilist, I don't go walking around being like if I ran into you in the street, I would not be like, collection of mereological simples that I refer to as Greg, what's up?
Right.
I would just be like, hey, man, implying that you're a man, even though I don't think that any men exist, only collections of simples organized like men exist. I don't talk like that. Why? Because most of the time it is a distinction without a difference. Okay. But where does it matter? It matters when we start talking about things like it matters when we start talking about things like substances. Aristotle was not a mereological nihilist, and he would say that like the thing that makes a chair is its chairness. And I'm going to just be like, well, no, there is no such thing as a chair. There's just meteorological symbols arranged chair-wise. So Aristotle saw the same problem that the meteorological nihilists saw. They're like, what makes a thing to be? And Aristotle was like, oh, it's the essence. And the meteorological nihilist just says, no, that thing doesn't actually exist. It's really just a collection of meteorological symbols arranged thing-wise.
Question. Why is it important that those things not exist?
Most of the time, it's not. You're able to go live a completely normal, fruitful life. You can go get a degree in engineering, and you can go get a job, and you can raise a family and be a productive member of society without ever thinking about meteorology. So in that sense, it's not important.
Okay.
But it is important if you're trying to think about things like essences, accidents, and souls. Those are like essences, accidents, and souls are like the three big like things for me that I think meteorological nihilism like has no room for, kind of. And then that becomes a problem if you're trying to be like an Aristotelian, or if you're trying to be, in my opinion, Catholic, because Catholics want to say that, like, you know, during Mass, the host is, you know, transformed from something that has the substance of bread to something that has the substance of Jesus Christ. Now, the accidents remain the same, but the substances change. Right. But if you're a meteorological nihilist, then there are no substances. So, like transubstantiation just isn't possible if you're a meteorological nihilist. So it doesn't matter most of the time, but it does matter when it really matters. Like when it does matter, it really matters. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's where I'll stop.
Okay. All right. We talked about life and the unlikelihood of it existing in the universe, and you said last time that you likened it to the rolling of 6 million or a million six-sided die, and you said that it would be to get one specific number on that die roll would be highly unlikely, highly unusual, but eventually you said our number is going to come up. Eventually, if you just keep rolling and rolling and rolling the dice, eventually that number will show up someday. And I thought, at the time I conceded that, but then I thought about it some more, and what occurred to me was fair, except how many die roll have there been when it comes to our universe?
So I could be misremembering, but I'm not sure that was my point. I think that my point may have been you will only get one result when you roll 6 million die, and the chances of you getting that one result is so infinitesimally small. But once you've gotten that result, you might be like, whoa, what are the odds that we got this result? And it's like, well, your odds are infinitesimally small, but you're already here. So like the odds of you getting the thing that you got is 100%. And so I think, now I don't remember, I'd have to go back and rewatch it, but I think my point is that here we are as human beings being like, wow, what are the chances that human beings could have formed? And it's 100%. Like that's the only thing that could have happened, did happen. As far as I can tell, we live in a deterministic universe. And so from the moment of the beginning of time, this was the only thing that could have happened. Now we're looking at things being like, well, what if gravity was different? Like then planets would have never formed and we wouldn't have existed. And it's like, well, yeah, but then we wouldn't be around to be like, wow, we don't exist. That's overwhelmingly likely. Like you can't, you're not around. It's called survivorship bias, right? So if you're not around it's kind of like all of the twins that you don't have because, when your father and your mother made you, there were like a couple million different ways that you could have been, right? And if any of the other sperm cells besides the one that made you wound up beating the one that made you to the egg, then you wouldn't be here. And like a twin of like not you would be here. And the millions of twins that are not here are not sitting around being like, wow, it's so overwhelmingly likely that we don't exist, and that's why we don't exist. You know what I mean? And I do, but however, that's one way to look at it. That's one angle, is to say that, what else was going to happen except that when something has happened, that's what's happened. Therefore, the chance of that having happened is 100%. You could look at it that way. But if you step back if you go pre-hoc rather than post-hoc,
that's where I would argue that's where logic comes from. That's where or reason. Reason is based on probability, I would say. So, for example, uh, if I come up and I just shove you to the ground, I just come and push you hard. Was that reasonable? Was that logical for me to do? Well, it kind of depends on the context, right? If you go flying to the ground and you get up and you look around and you're like, what was that all about? And you don't see any reason for me having done that, then it was probably an unreasonable thing for me to do, right? Whereas if you go flying and you hit the ground and you get up and you look around and all of a sudden you see this car oncoming and you suddenly realize, oh, he's trying to save my life, then me shoving you was not unreasonable at all, Um, and so, but let's present a third scenario, where I shove you and you get up, you recover, you look around, you don't see any reason at all for me having pushed you. And my explanation for it is that a car could have come and hit you, and you kind of look around and you're like, but there is no car. There was no car coming. And I'm like, well, but it could have happened. Like you never know. Just out of nowhere, some path that we didn't see, some car could have come by and hit you. Therefore, I needed to push you out of the way.
The chances are never zero.
Right, exactly. So does that all make sense? That if you look at it from a pre-hoc perspective instead of...
Yeah. So I do think I know what you're getting at, but because we wouldn't be here to observe it if it happened any other way, we can't look at it pre-hoc. Like we don't sit around creating universes every day and being like, oh man, I wonder if this one's going to create life, and then like 99.999% of the time it doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Like that's not how it is. There was only, as far as we can tell, there was only one universe that was created, and it's the one that we're in observing. So it's not surprising that the universe that we are in observing is a universe that is capable of producing us who are in it capable of observing, if that makes sense.
I think it does, but if it does, I would still contend that that's a post hoc perspective.
So it is post hoc, but it's necessarily post hoc in the sense that it's like an event with an occurrence of one, like it's only ever happened once, and it's as far as we let me like paint a scenario that I would be super impressed by fine tuning if we figured out how to like look into the past and we actually found out that like tons and tons and tons of universes could have happened but didn't, and ours did. That would impress me. But we don't know that any other universe could have happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I do.
It's, as far as I can tell, I don't know whether or not it's possible for gravity to be anything other than gravity is. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a lot more impressed by something that we know can be different. But we don't know that the strong electric force can be different. We don't know that electromagnetism can be different. All that we know is that it is what it is. And so, it's not a... It's not something that we can look at pre-hoc because we don't know that we can reset electromagnetism ever. Like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So...
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I am not a brain scientist, nor am I an astrophysicist. So unfortunately, the limits
and me neither
of my
too. So don't listen to me.
No worries. So we'll leave that one there for now. Time for our first clip.
Ooh, all right. I'm gonna change. I've had us on the 50-50 view, and now you occupied the full screen. So when you share your screen, only the video should be showing. Is that because I think so? Yeah. I would agree that you can be justified in believing things that can't be empirically proven. Now, it's a very small group of things that you can be justified in believing that cannot be empirically proven, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So, I'll go further and say that you are only justified in believing things that cannot be empirically proven if those are necessary for your functioning in the world in which we find ourselves. So you should have as few presuppositions as you must in order to operate. Everybody needs a certain number of presuppositions, but it's your job as a person who wants to be rational to minimize your number of presuppositions, because the worldview that has fewer presuppositions is just more parsimonious than a worldview that has more.
Okay. So, I'm a big fan of appreciating truth. That might sound a little pretentious, like, oh, you're all about truth, But I just...
That's philosophy, man. The whole thing is just so pretentious.
I am a big fan of truth. I don't know how else to say it. And so a part of that is appreciating things, the complexity of things when things truly are complex, and not sometimes people oversimplify things that are genuinely complex, and that irritates me. But the opposite is also true. I think there's some things that are quite simple in life, and sometimes people try to complicate them for one reason or another, and I don't appreciate that either. And so I just wanted to point out that I was watching that clip from our conversation last time, and a simple truth came out of that to me, and it was quite interesting. For all the talk about mereological nihilism and moral realism or anti-realism or whatever, at the end of the day, it struck me that essentially what you're saying right there, correct me if I'm wrong, is one should not believe in anything for which there is little to no evidence. Is that a fair summation of the whole thing, essentially?
Yeah. I'm fine with that, but the way that I would have phrased like what I said right there was just, you should have as few presuppositions as you must. Which is kind of another way of saying what you just said, kind of. So yeah, but I'm cool with what you said too.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to point out that if anybody happens to be watching who's getting a little bit lost, who has who's not able to follow the conversation as easily as others might be, and is thinking, these advanced concepts, at the end of the day, what it all sounds like it boils down to for you is, don't believe in anything. You shouldn't believe in anything for which there's little to no evidence. And if that's where you stand, then I'm happy to assert that we're on the same page as far as that goes. I think that's my position as well. And so
and I never meant to imply that I think that you believe in things for bad reasons and stuff like that.
No, and I wasn't suggesting that. Yeah. No, I was just saying. Sorry if that wasn't terribly articulate.
No,
I was just
you
ultimately
and I do
trying
agree,
to say,
I think, and I'll even go further to say that I did not get smarter. My IQ did not increase when I stopped calling myself Catholic. Nothing changed about how smart I was or am not when I just decided that I'm not Catholic anymore. And I think that some of the smartest people who I watch on YouTube on a routine basis are Catholics. Like people like Trent Horn and people like Jimmy Akin and, all of Matt Fradd's guests. And I watch people like the Return to Tradition guy. I watch like all of these smart Catholics are very smart. Duh, right? Smart people are smart. Duh.
Right.
But I don't think that anyone's I don't think that people who disagree with me are dumb, because I'm real dumb sometimes. So,
right.
but yeah, my only point there was that people should have as few presuppositions as you must, and I think that most Catholics do agree with me.
And I would just add to that, and why? And my thought, if I can put words in your mouth for a second, my thought would be, well, because, why should you believe more than there is evidence for?
Yeah.
Like, why? Because if you're that kind of person, then you're the kind of person who's going to be ready to buy the proverbial oceanfront property in Oklahoma,
Yeah.
So just wanted to point that out, that we talked about last time. We talked about establishing each other's stories and then figuring out where we diverge. Well, this time I wanted to point out that we're very much on the same page, I think, as far as that goes. So
I like that. That's cool. I'm glad you picked that clip. I like that.
Yes. Next clip.
I'll pull it up.
We're ready for the next one. 5718.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and put it on my screen.
Okay.
And rolling.
Yeah, that's the is-ought problem is that it is impossible to derive an ought from an is.
Impossible in what sense? In an empirical sense, or in what?
No,
way?
in like a
'Cause that-
logical sense too. Like, so imagine a syllogism that goes like, it is painful for babies for them to be tortured. Premise two. There is no premise two. Conclusion. You ought not torture babies. Like, that doesn't follow. You know, you would have to have an if-then statement. If it is painful for babies not to be tortured, then you ought not torture babies. It is painful for babies to be tortured. Therefore, you ought not torture babies. But now you're getting an ought from an if, not an ought from an is. So it is possible to get oughts from ifs, but it's not possible to get oughts from ises. That's the whole is ought problem.
Was that it? Was that the clip?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to go back and... Okay, we're back.
So in that clip, what immediately follows is me kind of sitting there and thinking about something seemed off in what was said, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it at the time. And so I said I was going to have to think about that for a little bit, and I've since rewatched the conversation, and it finally dawned on me. In a syllogism doesn't typically involve ifs and thens, does it?
They do.
Okay.
Like, if X, then Y. X, therefore Y. That's like a pretty common syllogism.
If X, then Y?
Yeah, so premise 1, if X, then Y. Premise 2, X. Conclusion, Y.
Okay. I'm used to syllogisms where it's more, there's single parts to each one. So, for example, carrots are purple. Purple things are bad. Therefore, carrots are bad. That kind of thing.
Yeah, that's another syllogism. And I forget that there's like terms for these things, and I forget what the terms are, but it's like Latin words like, I don't even remember what like modus tollens and modus ponens, and I don't remember what these things are, but yeah, some syllogisms have if-thens in them, some of them don't.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's been
just various
decades.
Yeah.
Since I last studied that. So, so then if that's the case, then it seems to me, based on what you just said, that as long as one couches morality in syllogistic terms, then you're okay with it.
Yes, exactly.
But is it so? You use the example of torturing a baby, and you said, you can't say it's painful for a baby to be tortured, therefore you shouldn't do it. But you can say, if it's painful for a baby to be tortured, then you shouldn't do it.
Can I try to help you, maybe?
Yes, please. Please do.
So imagine a syllogism like this. Here, I'll do a syllogism that doesn't even use an if-then, and I think this will work for our purposes. Or no, hold on. Let me use an if-then. If you are interested in maximizing human flourishing, then you ought to avoid torturing babies. You are interested in maximizing human flourishing. Therefore, you ought to avoid torturing babies.
Okay.
I am 100% cool with that. And I'm so all syllogisms have validity and soundness. This syllogism is undeniably valid. It's undeniably valid because it's just an if X, Y, X, therefore Y. But now you and I need to empirically examine the two premises. And if the two premises are true, then necessarily the conclusion is true. So premise number 2 is let's start at the beginning. Premise number 1, if you're interested in maximizing human flourishing, then you ought to avoid torturing babies. So does torturing babies diminish from human flourishing? I think so, yeah. I don't think that babies flourish when you torture them. I think that when you torture a baby, that baby's going to carry with it some kind of like, mental scarring that's going to like, give them, depression and PTSD as an adult, and like it's going to be bad. That baby would like live a more fulfilling life if it wasn't tortured. I think that's objectively true, irrespective of my opinion of it. Cool, on board. And then premise 2 is I am someone who cares about human flourishing, and I do care about human flourishing. I want humans to flourish. Therefore, I ought to avoid torturing babies. This is 100% true, and I am on board 100%. And that is what I call subjective morality. And I'm good with that.
Okay. So the way that if memory serves, the way that you originally put the syllogism was, if it is painful for babies to be tortured, then you should not torture babies. It is painful for babies to be tortured. Therefore, conclusion, you should not torture babies. The way that that's presented is, to me, a different way of saying, again, a difference without a distinction. It's a different way of saying it's painful for babies to be tortured, therefore you shouldn't do it. You know what I mean?
Yes, you're right. And the syllogism that I used in the first video isn't very good.
Okay.
And it's not good because, like, I actually disagree with premise 1. So I disagree with the fact that, like, pain alone is a reason not to torture somebody. I actually don't accept that. Because you're right. I smuggled I smuggled in like an is-ought thing.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have.
Yeah. And I thought, I was like, okay, hold on.
Yep. No, that was a good catch.
Right.
That was a very good catch. Yeah.
Okay.
But if I wanted to rephrase the syllogism into something that I would accept, I would do if you care about human flourishing, then you should avoid torturing babies. And then I'm on board. Because the way that I phrased it today avoids that is-ought problem, but the way that I phrased it a couple weeks ago, I ran right into that is-ought problem, and we didn't catch it in the moment, and you caught it on re-listen, and hats off to you, sir. Good catch.
Thank you.
That was good.
Teleology. Let's revisit that one for a minute. Again, for anybody that maybe didn't see the first round, teleology is what?
The study of ends or purposes.
Okay. So the belief that things or people or something in the universe has an end or has a purpose to it rather than it just exists. Okay.
And then more specifically, Aristotle thought of a telos as being one of the four like causes of a thing happening. So there's the efficient cause, the material cause, the final cause, which is teleology, and the essential cause. I think the first 3 I'm positive about. The fourth one I forget, but it's been a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
sounds right.
Yeah.
And the telos, in this case, you later defined for me, I think an email, as being something that we don't even. It's not even in our current field of vision. It's something that in Aristotle envisioned that nobody even thinks exists anymore. Can you speak to that?
Modern science hasn't appealed to teleology since like the Enlightenment. So like since like the 1700s, science has not appealed to teleology.
Okay, but when it comes to referencing a telos itself. It sounded, the way that you described it made it sound like a telos was an actual thing of some. It wasn't just a purpose; it was an actual thing that from which that.
Yeah,
thing.
it was one of the 4 causes. So why does anything happen? Well, because the 4 causes made that thing happen. So. Why did the acorn grow into an acorn tree? Well, for 4 reasons. There's the material cause, which might be like, well, it was planted in the soil, and so the soil is the material cause. But then there's like the efficient cause, which might be like, well, a human planted the acorn. But then there's also the final cause, or the teleology cause, the final cause. That's what Aristotle called it. And that would be that acorns have the telos of growing into acorn trees. So that was like one of the 4 main ingredients in in why anything happens, according to Aristotle. And then Aristotle was so, brilliant that his way of seeing the world was the primary way of seeing the world for the next, 2,000 years or whatever. I forget what was Aristotle, 200 or 300 years BC? I forget. Maybe longer.
BC.
I don't know. But but regardless, for like 2,000 years, that was the prevailing view, and it wasn't until the Enlightenment that people stopped appealing to teleology.
Okay. So, and I would put out, I don't know if this is the time to have a fuller conversation about the topic, but just for the moment, I wanted to point out that you had done a short video asserting that the Catholic Church has historically asserted that it's a sin essentially to use Coca-Cola for anything other than recovering from an addiction.
Yeah, and I was being facetious, of course, but
okay. Okay, yeah. I did that. See, I took you more seriously than that, and I was like, wow,
but
you don't what?
For the audience who might not have seen that short that I did, the point that I was trying to make in the video was that the Catholic Church is selective in its application of teleology. The Church will say that certain sexual acts are wrong. Why? Because of teleology, but not other acts are wrong. Even though the frustrating of teloi is a sin sometimes, but not other times. So I was trying to be extra funny, so I was using Coca-Cola as an example. Now, Aristotle did differentiate between intrinsic teloi and extrinsic teloi. Intrinsic teloi are teloi that are part of like biological systems. Extrinsic teloi belong to things that like humans make. So a hammer has a telos of to hammer, but that's not an intrinsic teloi, that's an extrinsic teloi. However, like human reproductive organs have a intrinsic telos of reproduction. So it is different. So I wasn't being entirely fair. But I thought it was funnier if I used Coca-Cola as an example, so I did.
Okay.
The Church has
It didn't come across that way to me. It came across like you were being totally serious. Like, this is what the Church teaches, and I was
maybe I'm too deadpan sometimes, but no. But the point that I was making too, and so Aquinas writes about this in the Summa. He uses the example of somebody like an acrobat who walks on their hands. So what is the telos of hands? Like to
not
grab,
to walk on.
To grab or to hold maybe. Certainly not to walk. So if you're walking on your hands, you're frustrating the ends of your hands. In the same way that if you're having non-procreative sex, you're frustrating the end of your reproductive organs. Now, I don't think that teloi exists. So when I'm talking about you got the idea.
Yes.
But my point is that if the Church thinks that all non-reproductive sex is immoral, then the Church should likewise teach that walking on your hands is immoral. But the Church does not teach that walking on your hands is immoral. Therefore, the Church is being inconsistent. That was the point that I was trying to make. Now, I was trying to be funny, and apparently I didn't do a very good job. But
you were provocative. That's for sure.
I'm trying to grow on YouTube. I have 30 subscribers now. But hey, I'm growing slowly. But so I'm trying to strike a balance between being like provocative to get the views, but then I also I really hate like clickbait, and I never want to lie to get more views.
Right.
You know what I mean?
There's a fine line sometimes between clickbait and a genuine drama of some sort or another.
Yes.
So the one about Kyle threatening you, that one got my attention.
That was like, Kyle's idea. Kyle was like,
really?
dude, I'm going to threaten you at the beginning of this, and then you can make that your clickbait thumbnail. I'm like, all right, man, if you're okay with that.
Yeah. So I appreciate that you added in parentheses in the title with truth and
Kyle's cool. It was Kyle's idea to do the clickbait.
Okay, gotcha. Now I know who to blame.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to revisit what we were just saying for just a second, I just want to point out that that procreation is actually only half, and this, but just for anybody that's watching, that it's only half of the design the Church sees in sexual activity. The other half, of course, is the union of the spouses. That's something that's less material and more abstract, but every bit is essential. It's a sin. It's as much of a sin to violate the unity aspect of sexual intercourse as it is to violate the procreative aspect. And to one additional thought, as far as the procreative aspect goes, the church in the Catechism points out that strictly on a biological level, pregnancy doesn't happen every time you engage in sexual intercourse, and that's for a reason. It's not as if in order to licitly engage in sexual intercourse, you must fully intend to make a baby, and if the baby doesn't happen, then you just did something wrong. It's just that for lack of a more articulate way of putting it, the general order of or purpose of sexual intercourse is that twofold generation of new life when it happens, according to the biological flow, and the union of the spouses, meant to reflect the union of the Trinity and the fruitful unity of the Trinity. So,
yeah. So the reason why I still even knowing about the unity thing, the church would not argue that it's immoral for a postmenopausal or even just somebody who's born without the ability to reproduce. So maybe there was a man who had testicular cancer, and so he no longer has testicles. They had to be removed. He's still allowed to have sex with his wife, even though it's impossible for them to have a baby. And why is that immoral? Well, the church would say because they're still fulfilling the unitive end of sex.
Well, but also that
and they have to be open to life, right? Even though it's impossible.
Yes, but more specifically, the act itself of the man without testicles engaging in sexual intercourse with his wife is as it's intended. The fact that there's a biological problem in place doesn't violate the essence of what it is that's happening still. Does that make sense?
So
in other words, if everything were working there as it was supposed to, then all would be well. You can't say the same thing about two men, for example, engaging in sexual activity, or two women.
Well, I mean, you can, right? Because if a man doesn't have testicles and the rest of his body is working perfectly, he still can't have children.
Right.
If two men have sex and everything works perfectly, they can't have children.
Right.
But to me, I don't see a symmetry breaker, especially because the two men can be people who are open to life. They could be wanting to adopt. They could be open to surrogacy or something like that. But the church would still teach that it's wrong for them to have sex, despite the fact that it's not wrong for a man who has a 0% chance of having kids to also have sex.
I would suggest that that's because you're looking at the end or the result of those actions rather than the actions themselves. And so if grandma were to die peacefully in her sleep versus someone coming in and putting a pillow over her face, the end of that is she's dead either way. So if you look just at the end, you think, well, what's the difference? She's dead in both cases. But if you look at the means by which she died, we have a dramatic difference. You know what I mean?
I mean, agreed. One is an act of murder and one is not an act of murder. But in the two situations, we have an act of non-procreative sex and an act of non-procreative sex.
Yes, but more specifically, we have an act of...
we have gay sex and straight sex.
Right. Of which...
But they're both non-procreative.
But intrinsically.
They're both intrinsically non-procreative.
Excuse me. Sorry, my brain.
No, that's all right. It's hard to think about these things.
Gay sex is intrinsically not open to life by its very nature. That's what intrinsic means. By the very act of what it is that's happening, it's not open to life. Regardless of how all the different parts or components are functioning. You know, you can have a perfectly healthy male engaging in sexual activity with a perfectly healthy male, and you're never, ever, ever going to see a child come of that, right? Whereas if you have a man or a woman who are not perfectly healthy, who have some sort of biological or medical issue, if one could just fix the issue, then you still, if you look at the act itself,
Yeah, but if you can
instead
fix
of the
the
end.
but if you can fix the issue for the gay guys, they can still have a baby too, like surrogacy or lab grown babies or adoption.
But that
So
isn't the issue. That's the end. That's the end, not the act itself.
having sex without testicles is non-procreative. The act itself of having sex sans testicles is non-procreative.
Right. But
And-
but at the end, the distinction, I think there's formal terms for the distinction, and I'm just blanking on what they are. The church would say that we have to differentiate between intrinsically incapable and conditionally incapable. The man who has no testicles is only conditionally incapable of procreation, not intrinsically, with another woman. And yeah,
I disagree. Like if we're defining like there's a man without a testicle or without testicles, he cannot, like he is intrinsically incapable of having babies. Biologically.
I understand what you're saying, but
Believe it or not, I do understand what you're saying too. But
okay.
this whole thing, and don't let me put words into your mouth. So like, correct me where I'm wrong. But I think that this whole thing stems from this idea of like there being like the substance of what it is to be man and the substance of what it is to be woman, and
Yes.
like it's like very platonic almost. It's like there's this platonic man and there's this platonic woman, and like the platonic ideals of man and woman can make baby, but the platonic ideal of man and the platonic ideal of man cannot make baby. Therefore,
Yeah,
but
that's a fair. I think Plato was off the mark in a number of different ways.
Yeah, of course.
But
But-
as a general,
but
as,
yeah,
as an idea, yeah, I think you're on to
and I just, I'm not a Platonist. I'm also not an Aristotelian.
Right.
And I also just don't. So there's like so many different things that I disagree with, right? So like I don't believe that in the essences of men and women. Like I don't think that essences exist. And then likewise, I don't think that morality is teleological. Like I don't think it's wrong to walk on your hands. So I also don't think it's wrong to have non-procreative sex.
So yeah, and that's critical. Is where people's perspective. If we have different perspectives on something, then it's not likely we're going to agree on the final product.
Exactly.
So, and
yes.
that's okay.
Gay sex is at the like it's like at the tippity top of the pyramid, and it relies on all the assumptions underneath it. And the assumptions for the Catholic underneath it are like Platonism or Aristotelianism, some combination of the two, as well as a teleological view of morality, like things like that. And so if you just lack those like more baseline beliefs, then it falls apart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I understand why the church says what they say, but I think that they're wrong at every step along the way. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Like
It does.
like
yeah.
I don't think that morality is teleological, and even if it was, I think that the church applies it inconsistently. And I don't believe in essences, and even if I did believe in essences, I would have no idea how to tell if the essence of a man is such that, you know what I mean? Like it's just every step along the way, I'm like, well, I don't agree. Oh, well, I don't agree. Well, I don't agree. And then we get to this conclusion, and it's no surprise that I don't agree, right? Like, of course I don't agree. I didn't agree with any of the steps along the way. So, you know, like.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, okay. So, you said last time that you can't verify that teleology is false. Quote, I just don't need it to explain anything, unquote. I just wanted to sort of point out what to me would be obvious first, and say that it's not needed to explain anything if it's not there. If it is there, then it is needed to explain things. You had said at one point, you shouldn't one shouldn't assume anything more than you have to function, to get through the day. And so my thought on that was agreement that that's true, but for me, I see a need to recognize the presence of God in life in order to get through the day, and obviously not in the sense of like, if I don't believe in God, then I can't get out of bed and eat cereal and can't make it to work. Not in that sense, but in the sense of how I'm going to conduct my life. What I should be doing, shouldn't be doing, that kind of thing. It is necessary, and so I just wanted to take a second, I guess, to point out that kind of like, since we can't technically prove it one way or the other, then I would just allege that teleology is not necessary if it's not necessary, but it is necessary if it is necessary. If that makes sense and is of any help to anybody anywhere.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah. Yeah, let me just maybe offer a couple of thoughts on that. So with regard to like you need God to function, this is something that I think about all the time. So what's the point of my YouTube channel? Am I out here to like get all those darn Catholics and make them stop believing? No, not really. What I do want to do is I want maybe to make Catholics in general more skeptical. So I don't want Catholics to just, hey, the church says that gay marriage is wrong, so I'm just gonna accept it. I won't lie. I do want people to be more accepting of gay folks. So that's like one goal, is to like increase the skepticism of Catholics. And then I guess also like another goal is I want Catholics to, so all of the Catholics in my life had a really negative reaction to me not being Catholic anymore. Now, I think in large part that's due to the Catholic community that I came from, like the Tradi community. But I want Catholics to realize that you can be not Catholic and not like an idiot. You know what I mean? I like to think that I'm not an idiot. I don't know if that's true, but I like to think so. And so I want Catholics to at least like realize that non-Catholics don't just want to sin. Like they might have like actual reasons to not be Catholic.
Okay.
And that's kind of it. That's the whole extent of my channel. Notice what I didn't say. I didn't say I want to like make Catholics stop believing in God. And so what you spoke to, like, I think you said, you don't let me put words into your mouth, but I think you used the word need. Like you said, you need God to like, just like, not to eat cereal, but like to like guide your life and your purpose and stuff like that. Cool. I don't really have a problem with that, to be honest. Like I'm not here to tell you that, well, I'm not going to give up until you're an atheist and you're depressed and you're on like painkillers and you're addicted to drugs, and that's not the goal of my channel at all. So,
it's not? Wait a minute, what?
I know. And you just hang up. You're like, I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah, in that case, forget this conversation.
Yeah. No, but if you authentically like gain like just way more than you lose by having this God belief, my goal is not to make you drop that. My goal is to make people more accepting of gay folks and stuff like that. But you can do that while there's most Catholics are pro-gay marriage. Now, most Catholics are also unaware of actual church teaching. Most Catholics don't accept transubstantiation. So I'm not saying that most Catholics are good Catholics, but but tons of people, the majority of people in this country who believe in God, I think, don't quote me, I think that over 50% of people who believe in God in this country are pro-gay marriage, because this country's like 70% pro-gay marriage. So, and we're like 95% believe in God or something like that. So
we're down to 80 at this point, but
maybe. But it's like shockingly high, because there's a lot of like non-religious people who like still believe in God. You know what I mean? They just don't. They don't go to church, and they're not Catholic, but they,
Right.
But regardless,
and vice versa, people who are religious who manage to get themselves into a church each week, but who don't care internally. It doesn't mean anything to them essentially.
Yeah. But so all of that to say, if you just get a lot of value out of your religious beliefs, I really don't have a problem with that at all. And I really don't have any like desire to make you give that up. Quick little story. My grandma passed away, a week ago. Oh, like 9 days ago, last Saturday. So I grew up in New Jersey. My grandparents still lived in New Jersey. So I flew to New Jersey. And I attended the first Latin mass that I've attended. It was her funeral mass. In 4.5 years, I attended something like that. Then we did the whole trad Catholic funeral, and we're Irish, right? So, my one, uncle played the bagpipes during the funeral, and it was, it was awesome. A really good send off for like a really special woman. But, that event meant a lot to me, even though I'm not religious. And I don't want to take that away from myself. And likewise, I don't want to take anything away from anybody as long as that thing is not harming people and it's valuable to you. Like if the net benefit is there, like I do want to take things away from you that are going to cause you to burn gay people at the stake. You know what I mean? Not you, Greg, obviously. But like, there are religious countries out there that still make it illegal to be gay. And I want that to stop.
Right.
I want to take away the traditions that make it, like the violent traditions I want to end. But those are predominantly not Catholic. Like the Catholic world is not burning people at the stake anymore.
Right.
So I'm not interested in removing that stuff. And if it means a lot to anybody, great. Who am I to take that away from you? It means a lot to me too, in a different way. Like it means a lot to me in a non-religious way. But yeah, so that's really my thoughts there is, I'm not anti-Catholic. What I am though is anti-discrimination against gay folks and anybody else who might be discriminated against. And that's it. That's really it. That was long-winded, but
it was good. I appreciate that. Yeah. Okay. Well, I actually have plenty more to say, but don't have the time to say it at the moment. So this probably would be a good spot to end this round.
Perfect. You're going to be my first guest to come on the show twice, and my first guest to come on the show 3 times, and probably my first guest to come on the show 4 times, and it'll be good.
We shall certainly see how this goes. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, Greg.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We'll talk again soon.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for coming on.
All right.
Bye. Bye.
I'll be back.